Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined.
Good evening, everybody. Happy Monday evening. I hope you had a peaceful day. And just to remind you, this is our PM actual news. And if you missed our morning AM actual news, I'm not repeating myself. So you're very much invited to watch my extended coverage of the news where I covered everything that did happen over the weekend, the reopening of Notre Dame, what happened there politically, also the Kennedy honors, and everything that did happen over the weekend. So I did cover that this morning. So it was about 45-minute live stream. So you are very much invited to watch it, because now we're continuing from there on. So this will be shorter here because we don't have many news. And again, I'm sticking to factual and actual news. Okay. So I hope you're doing well. Who is here? Let's see. Sierra, good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for joining me. Rosie Marie is here. Good evening. Good evening. Kelly is here. Good evening. Happy Monday. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me. This is wonderful. I don't have any videos to show you. I did all that in the morning. Actually, I do have one. I showed you the where Trump was on Meet the Press over the weekend. I showed you some, answers to the questions that he received, weird answers, weird questions. And the fact check to all of that will be in your email. The email is ready. I'm sending it usually right after our live stream. So if you're not subscribed, go get it. It's free. honest.substack.com. We dive into everything that happened in Syria and what is going on, or what will be happening from now on. What are the experts saying? I'm also having a brief readout today on that. Because I joined several meetings today to learn what people think about it. And then also we're getting into the strikes on ISIS military targets that CENTCOM, our U.S. military, did over the weekend. Also getting into anything that happened in Europe and also worldwide. So we're diving into everything in the email. Okay, so, and there I have all the videos of, or the snippets and the fact checks of Trump's questions and answers on Meet the Press, and also what are the facts and where was he mistaken, to put it this way, right? So when it comes to inflation, when it comes to changing the 14th Amendment and all that kind of stuff. So I discussed that this morning, but it's also in your email. Okay. Good evening. Jeanette is here. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, Jeanette. Good evening. Thank you for joining me. All right. So, good news from the White House official. This afternoon, Vice President Harris was at the U.S. Capitol to swear in senators and senators designate, right? That's how they call them now. Andy Kim, Democratic Senator from New Jersey, Adam Schiff from California, and Senator-elect Pete Ricketts, Republican from New Hampshire. No, please tell me where he is from, or I Google it once I show you the next video. While at the Capitol and in her role as president of the Senate, the Vice President Harris signed the Shirley Chisholm Congressional Gold Medal Act, which will instruct Congress to posthumously bestow the late Congresswoman with a Congressional Gold Medal. So a busy day for Vice President. Yesterday, she was in D.C. at the ceremony at the Kennedy Center, together with President Biden and First Lady, and also Second Gentleman. All of them received standing ovation. I spoke about it this morning, showed you pictures. And then today, she was again at the U.S. Capitol, and then afterwards they had a ball for Congress members. So President Biden hosted the ball. Vice President was certainly there, and then tomorrow they're hosting a dinner for unity, and which will be in the East Room at the White House. So 2 busy days for both of them. Then again, as to the schedule, the president will be attending virtually G7 meeting on Friday. In between then and now, not much, but tomorrow morning, President Biden will be speaking in DC, talking about the economic results and accomplishments of the Biden-Harris administration. And so this is a long-awaited speech and has been promised to us by the White House for some time. And so this is where he gets to toot his own horn, so to speak, for the achievements that certainly account to his doing. Now, Biden-Harris administration hosted final Tribal Nations Summit and announced historic initiatives. So President Biden presided over the final White House Tribal Nations Summit of his administration, celebrating historic advancements in nation-to-nation relationships with tribal nations. Key announcements included the designation of the Carlisle Federal Indian Boarding School National Monument in Pennsylvania, which acknowledged the oppression endured by Native children in the federal boarding school system and promoted healing. The administration unveiled a comprehensive strategy to revitalize native languages and support tribal sovereignty. Highlights included $45 billion in investment for Indian country and initiatives addressing systemic injustices, protecting sacred lands, and centering indigenous knowledge in federal decisions. A 2024 progress report for tribal nations outlined these milestones. And so this monument, President Biden's 12th Antiquities Act designation, memorialized the resilience of indigenous peoples and served as a site of education and remembrance, with tribal nations actively involved in its management and storytelling. So President Biden and Vice President Harris addressed the White House Tribal Nations Summit, emphasizing the administration's efforts to rectify the federal government's historic underinvestment in Native communities. And certainly we have seen President Biden speak lately a lot. And so, but we haven't seen Vice President Harris pretty much since the election or since her speech after the election. So I wanted to show you the speech that she delivered today. So maybe not the full speech, but certainly to get a feeling on how she's doing, right? Okay, so let's take a look.
Good afternoon. Can we please applaud Sophia? This is why we know the future is bright, right? Please have a seat. Please have a seat. Well, I want to thank everyone for your leadership, for your long-standing friendship, and for the work we have yet to do together. Let me say it is so good to be with Secretary Deb Haaland, who has been an incredible leader, as we know, and such a powerful fighter, and a dear friend and colleague to me. So I thank you, Deb, for all that you do. And to all the leaders who are here today, including all the leaders from California who I've worked with over the years on so many important issues, from protecting the rights of Native children to fighting for the safety of Indigenous women to conserving Native land. And I believe, of course, that the bonds between our nations are sacred. They are sacred. And that the federal government has a duty to safeguard and strengthen those bonds, a duty to honor tribal sovereignty, to ensure tribal self-determination, and to uphold our trust and treaty obligations. And I will always fight to build a future of opportunity and dignity for all Native people and all Native communities. As Vice President, I have had the honor to meet and work with thousands of Native leaders, from young leaders at our extraordinary tribal colleges and universities, to advocates fighting to protect Native votes and voting rights, to union workers in Arizona and Native small business owners from across the country. And here's what I know to be true. Native communities are home to some of the most innovative, skilled, and determined people in America. And as we all know well, there is an extraordinary amount of ambition, aspiration, and ability across Indian country. However, what is often lacking is the opportunity to pursue that ambition, aspiration, and ability. For far too long, the federal government has underinvested in Native communities, underinvested in Native entrepreneurs and small businesses, and underinvested in Native hospitals, schools, and infrastructure, which is why over the past 4 years, we have made it a central priority, and it will remain a central priority to address these historic inequities and to create opportunity in every Native community. Take, for example, our work with Native small business owners. We know that one of the biggest hurdles to Native entrepreneurs is having access to capital. It's one of the biggest challenges. It's not for lack of a good idea, for serious work ethic, for a plan that actually would benefit the community and meet a demand, but it's access to capital. On tribal land and in many rural areas, the nearest bank is sometimes more than 100 miles away, making it more difficult for folks to get the resources and support that they need to start and grow a small business, which is why I have worked to expand access to capital since I served in the United States Senate. And as vice president, have made sure we invested over $1 billion in Native community banks, banks run by people who live in the community and understand and are in the best position then to understand the needs of the community, the capacity of the community, in a way that in particular other banks may not. And the impact of that approach is profound. As just one example, soon after taking office, I spoke with Anna Lebeau, a member of the Omaha tribe. And we had an extensive conversation. I reached out to her, and she understood that basically as an executive director of a Native community bank in South Dakota, that the entrepreneurs in the community, many of them just were not being recognized by those who could invest in their work and in their growth. We talked, for example, about entrepreneurs in the community who make traditional quilts and the challenges that they often face.
All right. So, all right. Promise not to show the full speech, but if you are interested, I will put the link to her speech and President Biden's speech into your newsletter, so you can take a look at that. And Rosie Marie, thank you so much for telling me. Nebraska, right? So Pete Ricketts is a Republican from Nebraska, senator-elect, and that's what whom Vice President met today. Okay, let's continue from here. This is a picture from this address. So again, both President Biden and Vice President Harris addressed the tribal nations and talked about the monument and the investment. All right, now, given everything that did happen in Syria, again, to repeat myself, Syrian people have been freed from a cold-blooded killer and his regime. The regime that lasted over 50 years, and this particular leader, Assad, for 13 years, who was putting innocent women and children in jail, in bunkers, underground, who has killed his own people, who has bombed his own cities and citizens with phosphor bombs, who made terrorized the nation for a decade and some. And so, yes, we are celebrating their liberation. This is the opportunity to quote President Biden and what I covered this morning in his speech, where he said this is opportunity for celebration, but also for a bit of anxiety, because now we don't know what will the new leadership be, right? And again, for details on that, please watch the morning coverage where I talked about what Turkey played as a role in this, liberation, what the rebels are and who they are, what their composition is, and what the guesstimation will be, right? So, given that, President Biden spoke today with His Majesty King Abdullah II of Jordan. President Biden emphasized his full support for Syrian-led transition process under the rules outlined by the UN, right, in UN Security Council Resolution 2254. He also discussed the situation in eastern Syria to include the U.S. commitment in the de-ISIS mission, including the strikes conducted last night against the concentration of ISIS fighters and leaders. Now, this is what U.S. Air Force conducted, right? 75 strikes against ISIS targets, preventing ISIS from taking over Syria. Pretty much, right? Because the rebels, they officially claim not to be associated with Al Qaeda or Syria or ISIS, but if you look in their leadership, there are several people that are coming from Al Qaeda. Right now, this was sort of co-sponsored by Turkey. Turkey, I showed you this morning, their celebration, their indication that Ottoman Empire wants to be, they want to rebuild it and whatnot, right? So again, I covered this morning. I showed you the pictures. So now the problem is who is going to have control, right? What this new composition of power will be. Syria never had such democracy. So will they be fighting against each other? Different minority groups, such as Libya, after Gaddafi was removed from power, so to speak, and killed and raped and all that. I sat at the UN watching the live stream of this. So, but then Libya entered the phase where, everybody was fighting everybody, right? So is this what will be happening in Syria, or will there be some type of regime or leadership, right? Leadership, to put it this way. Now, Israel also has started conducting missions, taking over a hill or a mountain in Syria, which has lots of values. Again, I spoke about it this morning, so I don't want to repeat myself. But why Israel is doing it? Because they want to have a voice in the new leadership that will be building itself up in Syria. Why? Because they're sharing a border, and for them it's a threat, right? So President also emphasized the support of the United States for the stability of Jordan and Jordan's central role in maintaining stability and de-escalating tensions throughout the Middle East region. The leaders also discussed the situation in Gaza and the urgent need to conclude the ceasefire and hostage release agreement, together with a surge in humanitarian assistance for the people in Gaza. They agreed to remain in regular contact directly and through their teams. Now, good news, Hezbollah is weak. Good news, Russia is weak and out of Syria for now. Now, what I have heard today, I joined 3 meetings with national security advisors of former administrations, all 4 former administrations excluding Trump administration, with the former foreign minister of Ukraine, with the other, briefings and meetings. So off the record, on the record, all of it. And the discussion here is that, for Russia, the problem is that, yes, they're out of Syria, but they have several military bases in Syria, right? I reported to you in detail, I drew a map, how they lost their control of their military base and naval base in Tartus in Syria, right? Because the rebels, they crossed from north to south, and they cut off a piece that is close to the sea where that military base was and is. To which Russians started doing drills just to get rid of pretty much of their missiles, and so the rebels will not take this over. Sort of like what ended up being when US left Afghanistan and we kind of left everything to Taliban, right? So But now Russia has an issue. They want to have access to their military base. And so a notion that I've heard today from legitimate people that are in, in national security, that Trump plays with an idea to put that as an incentive, protecting those bases as an incentive for Putin to start negotiating with Ukraine. So somehow they're trying to connect Syria issue and Russia's weakness and loss, serious loss in Syria to negotiations with Ukraine, which again, creative, but can end up being wild, to put it, to say the least. So we have to see. We have to see who is going to prevail. Is it Turkey? Is it, I'm also have contacted a journalist whom I respect, who is from who represents Kurdish people, and he reports mainly in Kurdish on their national television. And I want to hear from them, from their point of view, because they are a minority, right, in Syria, and they are very much targeted by Turkish forces, and they're being really killed since yesterday, pretty much. And they're asking U.S. for the support. And so, why is this important? Because that's again millions of people that do not have their interest at this moment represented. So, now what the experts said. Now, this is from Council for Foreign Affairs. Now, the swift collapse of Syria's regime brings a humiliating end to Russia's and Iran's sway and opens the door for greater Turkish influence. But the fall of the regime will impact the efforts of Israel, Turkey, and the United States in the region. Now, they also mentioned that it is a really bad timing because we are transitioning. The power in the U.S. is transitioning. So we can't really control Syria or ensure that certain power comes into leadership, or what the leadership will look like, or their political agenda will look like, right? So the ascendance of Sunni Islamist rebels in Syria should be viewed with great caution by Western powers, but the Assad regime's collapse disables a critical node in Iran's regional proxy network. Again, this is sort of the axis. It's called, referred to as the axis of resistance. That's why I'm not a fan when we say the resist movement within United States, because again, given my background and the international politics, well, the axis of resistance, that's the Iran and all that kind of stuff. So the fall of that, Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, that is the good news, right? And then it was very interesting where somebody who was a senior official formerly in the National Security Council, who said, well, but yes, Israel played a huge role in conducting those targeted strikes on literally Hezbollah, on weakening Iran, right? And they did achieve that because they didn't follow Biden's administration's advice, because, well, our administration didn't want to do this. They wanted to resolve everything peacefully and diplomatically, and then Netanyahu didn't listen to it and did it. So which led to Iran being weakened, which sort of helped certainly this situation right now. Without that, I don't think, or nobody sees Syrian regime falling anytime soon. So this sort of provoked it. Now, also what I've heard today is that the HTC, right, the rebels and their group, the acronym for it, they were provoked and sort of supported by Turkey to do a limited operation. But then as they proceeded, they saw that the Syrian regime was very weak. They did not see any resistance. And so they thought, why not? Let's take over the entire country. And then Syrian people started helping them, building battalions, helping them literally to throw off Assad regime. And so again, Turkey allegedly did not see the entire country being taken over, but the regime falling entirely. But again, once the appetite comes as you are at the dinner table, right? So again, remains to be seen. Now, in terms of Department of State, Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke today with Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan about the latest developments in Syria. Blinken discussed the need for peaceful transition of power through an inclusive Syrian-led process in the spirit of UN Security Council Resolution 2254, which, again, President Biden discussed with the King of Jordan. Secretary Blinken emphasized the need to continue the global coalition to defeat ISIS, right? This is the de-ISIS. That's the mission in Syria, to ensure the protection of civilians, including members of vulnerable groups. That's where Kurdish folks are coming through, right? And civilian infrastructure across the country. Secretary Blinken reiterated the need for all actors in Syria to respect human rights and uphold international humanitarian law. Secretary Blinken also expressed condolences for Turkish soldiers who lost their lives in a helicopter crash today in Sparta in Turkey. So again, this is remains to be seen. I'm just trying to stick to valuable facts and information. Again, not to take away from the celebration in Syria and the very much deserved celebration of the end of this suffering. Again, what I'm sharing is news. I don't cover, yes, we are celebrating. What I'm trying to explain is what can go from now on. Okay? So don't come for me on socials that I'm not celebrating. I am celebrating. And I'm praying for Syrian people to be liberated and live in democracy. But I'm sticking to facts. Okay. Now, when it comes to Trump, and this is very interesting. Remember how we kind of stopped hearing about Tulsi Gabbard being nominated for Director of National Intelligence, right? Which means she, if confirmed, she would be overseeing 18 national agencies, CIA, FBI, right? And the budget of, I think, $10 billion. So certainly, if this is a person that is very much pro-Assad, right? And Assad did flee to Moscow and got the residency there and asylum and whatnot. And who is, let's say, was not on a fly list, which is a fact, and was on the no-fly list. That's what I mean. Who is related to Russia, who consumed only RT News, the channel that is banned, literally sanctioned, in the United States, a propaganda channel, which was confirmed by all her aides pretty much. Now, this is a big threat, right? And so Russia is failing. Russia is weak. And now today, suddenly, we received 3 press releases from Trump's team saying how wonderful Tulsi Gabbard is. One of them is, it says, brilliant Tulsi Gabbard, praised as Director of National Intelligence nominee. Tulsi Gabbard's earning strong praise from Capitol Hill and beyond as President Trump, elect, as his nominee for Director of National Intelligence. Gabbard, a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve who saw 3 deployments, represented Hawaii in Congress for 8 years, including as a member of the Armed Services, Homeland Security, and Foreign Affairs committees. Earlier today, 250-plus U.S. military veterans, including Medal of Honor recipients, signed a letter supporting her nomination, lauding her as a warrior whose vote cannot be bought. And so, again, this notion, and this is just one of those things, then Team Trump released a new video on cabinet nominees, appointments who will make America wealthy again. And so they produced sort of this very propaganda-ish video. I'm not showing it, but first reported by The Blaze, Team Trump released new video highlighting the impeccable qualifications of Trump's cabinet nominees, Kevin Hassett, Howard Lutnick, Scott Bessent, who have proven track records in decades of business experience, creating jobs and growing the economy. That will work alongside President Trump to protect American workers. Anyway, and started talking about no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, no tax on tips. Now, don't forget that no tax on overtime is true, because they promise not to ensure people are paid for overtime. So this is not a lie. You can't tax $0. No tax on Social Security because Social Security is targeted to be eliminated and scratched from the budget. So yeah, no tax on $0 again. It cannot be argued that Social Security is not a part of those budget cuts that this Department of Governmental Efficiency led by Musk and Ramaswamy, that they will not consider it. They want to scratch $2 trillion. You cannot do it without touching Social Security. So let's call a thing. So again, remains to be seen. That's all I have on Trump, pretty much. He has new nominees. Okay, let them be appointed, then we talk about it. Now, Musk, though, speaking of Social Security, he retweeted a series of posts by Utah's Republican Senator Mike Lee, who dubbed Social Security as deceptive and called for its dismantling. And Musk said this is an interesting thread. This gained, hundreds of millions of views on his Twitter account, and that's being tooted in the MAGA world. That's the latest. Now, U.S. also sanctioned global gold smuggling network on this International Anti-Corruption Day. So the U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, the OFAC, sanctioned 28 individuals and businesses tied to a global gold smuggling and money laundering network led by Kamlesh Patni. This operation, based in Zimbabwe, used bribery and financial schemes to exploit the country's resources and reaching corrupt officials while depriving citizens of economic benefits. And so Acting Under Secretary Bradley T. Smith highlighted the global consequences of corruption and reaffirmed the U.S. commitment to combating it. So again, deep dive is in your email. Next is China. This is very interesting. First time since 2008, China signaled economic shift with a moderately loose monetary policy ahead of U.S. trade tensions. So bottom line, everybody, including Canada and Mexico, but not excluded to them, also China is preparing to possible tariffs under Trump since he's repeating it constantly. So China's top decision-making body has announced plans to adopt a moderately loose monetary policy in 2024, a phrase not used since 2008 financial crisis, along with more proactive fiscal policy. The move reflects Beijing's efforts to support economic growth and address anticipated challenges, including trade tensions with the incoming U.S. administration of Trump. The policy shift suggests China is preparing for potential economic disruptions in global trade dynamics. Now, China has been literally boosting its economy. The economy has been relying on real estate for decades, which has been interrupted by COVID and through COVID. So they have been boosting their economy quarterly. Last time, about a month or two ago, with $3 trillion. So they are artificially bringing keeping their economy afloat, and now they're getting ready for the 110% of tariffs on some products, right? Because Trump said 10% added to the tariffs. Now we impose tariffs between 25 to 100% on Chinese products. So again, it will be between 35 and 110. And then China certainly will impose tariffs to us, right? And so again, countries are preparing. Nobody is taking it for okie doke and, waiting to see what will happen. Now, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer explores trade opportunities in the Gulf region. Again, this is, response to the trade war, pretty much, that will be coming up. UK Prime Minister held talks with UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan during his first official visit to the Gulf since assuming office. Discussions centered on strengthening economic ties and exploring a potential free trade agreement between UK and Gulf Cooperation Council. Now, this is huge, right? Free trade. While we are imposing tariffs. Starmer is set to continue his diplomatic tour with a visit to Saudi Arabia, highlighting the UK's efforts to deepen partnerships in the region. Any comments? Let me see. No text because there will be no overtime. Hey, Jay. Yes. Yeah, Jay Harden. Thank you. That's exactly what I mean. Yeah, they're not lying. There is no tax. There's also no pay. You can't tax a pay, no pay. So Romania cancels their presidential runoff amid election interference allegations, as reported. Right, their constitutional court annulled the scheduled presidential runoff, which was like a second round of their presidential election, right? Citing election interference and digital media manipulation, right? The government accused TikTok of violating national regulations, with pro-Russian candidate Georgescu benefiting from rapidly spreading content. Outgoing President Klaus Iohannis recently declassified intelligence indicating Russia's aggressive hybrid action targeting Romania. The decision highlights growing concerns over foreign influence in elections and the role of digital platforms in shaping political narratives. Now, TikTok here. Back to US, TikTok is facing a shutdown unless their parent company ByteDance will sell TikTok to an American owner by January 19th. Now, if you were ask me, I think Elon Musk will buy it, but let's read. So TikTok and its parent company ByteDance now have enlisted former U.S. Solicitor General Francisco to represent them in a legal battle against a law that could ban the platform in the United States. Francisco, known for defending Trump and his policies before the Supreme Court during his administration, will work alongside Hashim Mupan at law firm Jones Day. The potential ban stems from concerns about national security risks, with lawmakers citing fears that China could force ByteDance to share data from TikTok's 170 million US users. TikTok denies any ties to Chinese government, which is bullshit. Because any company that operates in China by law, by Chinese law, has to be owned to 51% by Chinese government, leaving Chinese government an opportunity to dive into any data. This is just the law. So the DC Circuit Court recently upheld the law's constitutionality, which requires ByteDance to divest TikTok by January 19th, 2025, or face a ban. Now, Francisco's legal team has extensive experience with high-profile cases, including defending Trump's travel ban and representing U.S. gun manufacturers in a Supreme Court case. ByteDance's decision to hire Francisco signals the company's determination to fight the ban at the highest judicial level. As for me, it signals that they are pro-Trump and they're trying to give Trump's guy a little nod and employ him. So with Trump coming in and them hiring Trump's lawyers, am I the only one who sees it? I don't know. Now, what should be said about TikTok? Why is it not going to go away? Here's why. A year ago, TikTok started a new phase, so to speak, where there's two ways to make money on TikTok. Let's say you are a creator, so you can monetize your content, meaning you go live, people give you gifts. You can also create series that people pay to download, and certainly you get paid for a certain number of views, right? Or if you want to sell through TikTok Shop, you are registering as a merchant. And so this was only open to people with U.S. With U.S. Social Security numbers, so citizens or permanent residents, people who have an LLC in the United States. That's why it became very popular for people from around the world trying to get people from the U.S. to be a part of their company for at 10% or whatever share of profits, because it was only open to US citizens. Now, what does it mean? You register as a seller, as a merchant in TikTok Shop, meaning you go that sort of like a marketplace, and the level of it's sort of like Temu, right? It's very cheap, fast delivery, free delivery, coupons, all that kind of stuff. And so you are going to this marketplace and you decide what you want to put in your own store on TikTok and you sell. Now, what started happening, again, a year ago, actually it was last summer, what started happening is that people started selling And then they talk about a product, and then suddenly a bunch of influencers started going viral. Hence, they would sell enormous amounts of goods. For instance, you sell something for $1, right? And for this dollar, you will get 10 cents to keep as a merchant. And well, if you sold, but what Amazon requires is to buy out certain number of goods, and then as a merchant, you can start selling them in the Amazon. Or if you produce your goods, you have to provide a proof that you do have those goods. TikTok did not ask for it. So people were selling products they did not have and they could not afford buying. So let's say they sold something for $1, right? Hoping to keep 10% of it. Now, if you sell 100 of those, well, you can buy product for $100 and just, order it and then sell it. If you sell 100,000 products, that's a different numbers. So people, those influencers and sellers through TikTok Shop, they pretty much were in trouble because they would sell through TikTok a lot and they cannot afford buying out the product. So TikTok said, okay, we will register in the United States as a company mortgage, right? That will provide you financing for your, for your purchases or whatever you sold. And so altogether, this way, TikTok has loaned over $3 billion to American merchants, those influencers within the United States. So TikTok, aside from being a social media company, it's a financial company in the United States. So when I, spoke to people, lastly, they're buying Hollywood studios in LA, moving influencers to LA, making it sort of 24/7 production and sales sort of enterprise with the TikTokers going from one room to another, each room being decorated to sell one product, let's say a water bottle. And so every single influencer will come after an hour or so into this room and start selling it to their own following. So you go all around and sell all kinds of products, right? For your 10% or whatever you're earning. And so they're making $200 million. They made $200 million on Black Friday in China alone, 50 million in the US. So it's a very lucrative business because a lot of US users are now having loans from TikTok. I do not see TikTok leaving US market as an app because people are, by the way, TikTok does not charge percent, right, or interest rates on those loans. You just have to keep selling. And so the more you sell, the further you go into debt with TikTok. And so now they changed the rules. If you were to enter this merchant program at TikTok, now you have to buy out a product. So same as they did with Amazon. But those who did start a year ago, they are on this payment program. So at this point, last summer, it was $3 billion that they loaned to American users. Now it's between 3 and 10. So again, this is my 2 cents that I wanted to add to it. It's not really about the social media platform where data is leaking to China. I'm sure it does. But also how, and I'm not defending TikTok. TikTok is a source of propaganda. Let's put it this way, right? We have enough social media platforms to survive without TikTok. What TikTok did is introduce those reels, right? Short videos that later became reels, which certainly boosted Facebook and Instagram because they literally copied them. Instagram and Facebook and Meta copied before Snapchat, right? That's where the live stories came from on Instagram. And then they copied TikTok. So certainly they boosted the system of Instagram and their worth. But, to call a thing, I think TikTok is way bigger threat than what it's portrayed to be. Trump's lawyers don't have the greatest track record for winning. So it's but it ends up in Supreme Court, Bonnie. And thank you, Bonnie, for joining, by the way. But everything ends up in Supreme Court. And as I spoke with, folks at Pentagon last week, they said, well, we're going to sue if we get less, budget, but everything will end up in Supreme Court. So, okay, we'll see. I'm Maurice. Exactly. Probably. Well, thank you for agreeing. Right, I missed the opportunity to know what you're agreeing to. Okay, I'm done with the news. This was short. This morning was 45 minutes. Now it's 45. So if you missed this morning, I highly encourage you to tune in and get that coverage. And then altogether, you were about 1.5 hours of live stream today. Anything else? Oh, I wanted to just for kicks and giggles. So the Time Person of the Year. They're down to their final picks. They will announce it on Thursday, but on the list are Kamala Harris, Kate Middleton, Elon Musk, Yulia Navalny, Benjamin Netanyahu, Jerome Powell, Joe Rogan, Claudia Sheinbaum, Donald Trump, and Mark Zuckerberg. I don't know how they came up with this list. Don't ask me. I really don't know. But if we were to talk about influence, probably those who elected Trump are most influential. Anyway. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to see you tomorrow morning for the AM actual news. 9 a.m. we'll be here, and I'll be reporting on whatever news we have, and hopefully it will be all good news. Yes, thank you. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Rosie Marie. Thank you, Sierra. Kamala should be the person of the year. Yeah, she was thrown in to run in 3-1, so I see that point. Thank you, Sierra. Thank you, Jay. Yes, Maurice. Good night. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. See you tomorrow morning. Stay peaceful. Okay, have a peaceful night. I'll see you in the morning. Thank you for joining.